Hello, good morning and good evening to everyone on the call. I am Erica Chung, the Arts Manager for the British Council Malaysia. Thank you for joining us at our Human Nature information session, where we will share more about the programme and our partners. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know who you are and where you're from while I begin this 1.5 hour session. We will also be communicating about the Human Nature Delegate Open Call opportunity that is currently ongoing until Sunday, 21st January. And we hope to find 7 successful applicants that will be travelling to Malaysia in March for this creative research and study trip delegation. To begin, I would like to introduce you to my colleagues, Florence Lambert, Head of Arts and Creative Industries, and Khadija Turner, Arts Programme Coordinator. We are the British Council Malaysia Arts and Creative Industries team. On the call with us today are also our partners, co-founders.
Yeah, one of those things. You're talking about.
Yeah.
Erica, sorry, you're on mute.
Oh, okay, I think I'm back on now. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So before we start with our first speaker, here are a few gentle reminders for the session. Kindly note that this session will be recorded and made available on our webpage post-session. Please keep your mics on mute while speakers are presenting. If you have any questions during the presentations, please write your questions in the chat bar. There will be a Q&A at the end to address your questions. Or if you prefer to ask your questions verbally, please use the raise hand function and we will call upon you. Teams is also auto-transcribing the session, so please do go to the top right of your screen to switch on the live caption function by clicking on the More button. Select the language speech option and then proceed to turn on live captions. Please click on or save all the links that appear in the chat, as the chat will no longer be accessible after the session ends. So thank you. That's all from me at this point. Now over to you, Florence.
Thank you, Erica. Can everybody hear me clearly? Yes. Okay, so yes, my name is, okay, thank you. I see all the thumbs up. My name is Florence, and I would like to start by wishing you all a good morning and a good evening. And thank you for attending our session today. I also would like to start by thanking our Malaysian partners who are collaborating with us to put this delegation together, namely Forever Sabah, Borneo Bangkok, and Katrina Maddox of Katama, Borneo. We will be giving them the floor shortly so that they can present to you their work. So my intervention today is about providing you with an overview of Human Nature Programme, the delegation, and our positioning with this programme as British Council. Just a word of caution, it's going to be on my side quite wordy because I need to go through quite a lot of details, so bear with me, and I apologize in advance for that. So last year, the British Council launched a new global programme called Cultural Response to Global Challenges. The global programme focuses on the transformative powers of arts and culture. It promotes artistic and cultural expression to create a more inclusive and sustainable future. Its climate change strand will enable artists to tell the climate change story and improve practices in cultural organizations. Under this framework, in Malaysia, Human Nature will be a 3-year program of collaborations, partnerships, knowledge and cultural exchanges between the UK and Malaysian artistic, scientific, academic stakeholders, civil society organizations, and the communities they work with to address climate adaptation with creative responses. But not only. The program's objectives are to explore, test, document, and share insights on the roles arts and creativity can play in the fight against climate change, generate dialogue, connections, knowledge exchange, and collaborations between civil society organizations, arts, and climate stakeholders. It's to support arts organizations who want to embed climate into their practice and support civil society organizations who want to embed arts as a pillar of their organization. And it's about raising awareness about sustainable production consumption models, alternative narratives, beliefs and value systems, and the contribution they can bring to climate adaptation by including and listening to marginalized voices and wisdom through equitable participation and conversation. And finally, it's about creating a network of practitioners to exchange and collaborate. So why is the British Council Malaysia doing a program on arts and climate adaptation, and why an emphasis on Borneo? There are several reasons and answers to this question. The first reason is that we are all impacted by climate change. Globally, we know that climate change is the youth's most important challenge. Everyone, everywhere is going to be or is already affected by climate change. But climate change will not impact everyone equally. According to a report by the UN Special Reporter Karima Benoon, published in 2020 on climate change and cultural rights, women and girls, people with disability, marginalized coastal, rural, and indigenous communities will be impacted first and the most by climate change. In April 23, we commissioned a roadmap to identify the thematic that would generate the most relevant collaborations interest between the UK and Malaysia arts sector. The research identified 8 possible pathways, and climate emergency and Malaysia's cultural and biodiversity came out as one of the most important themes. In both countries, artists and creatives are increasingly interested in exploring the issues, and their impact on communities and civil society organizations are equally starting to turn to arts to communicate their work, and we wish to support them along that direction. The second reason why we want to explore the second reason is that we want to explore the role of arts and culture, the role that they can play in the fight against climate change. In the same report, Ms. Karima Benoon states how important it is to support initiatives and programs that raise awareness around the impact climate change has on cultural rights and communities. She also explains how cultures and cultural rights are not only casualty of climate, but are also part of the solution. They are tools for climate change mitigation and adaptation strategy. Arts and culture can bring resilience, help humanity explore the different scenarios, create awareness, educate, and mobilize activism. Climate issues cannot exclusively be addressed through technological, or scientific solutions. A holistic approach must include human beliefs, value, and behavior. The role of the cultural sector is as important as science and technology. Arts and culture can bridge the gap between science, policy, and civic action. They provide a space for collective reflection, dialogue, capacity building, and action for climate adaptation. The third reason why Malaysia, and especially Borneo, is because Malaysia and especially Borneo is home to a unique combination of cultural and biodiversity. There are only 17 mega-diverse regions in the world, and Malaysia is one of them. There is much at stake, both in terms of risks and opportunities. Finally, human nature is also the logical progression of our previous work. For the last 7 years, through the work that we've done around crafts especially, we have explored and documented the connections between craft, sustainability, and the threats to cultural practices. And we want to continue this work and expand it further. So I will now move on to the more practical information around timeline, activities, objective, and outputs of the program. The inception phase of the program started with a roadmap in April 23 and will be concluded by this delegation. The phase is about initiating the program's connection and the framework to gain a deeper understanding of the issues at stake and develop the stages of the program, the next stages of the program. The inputs of this phase will be a research which will start this month, and it's about mapping stakeholder, identifying and analyze strands and collaboration pathways in both countries. The partnership with Forever Sabah and Borneo is also another output. And finally, the delegation of the UK artists and organizations coming to Borneo and Malaysia. Now, the second phase will start after the delegation and will be about developing and supporting further meaningful collaboration and projects to respond to the program's objectives. We will not predetermine what these projects' shape and form should take. We do not want to be prescriptive, but we want the projects to grow organically from the exchanges made. Potentially, there could be a new artistic, creative, academic collaboration or a community-based project. Whatever shape they take, they should not only benefit the collaborators, but they must create a positive long-term impact on the communities as well. They will also have to be developed with the carbon footprint in mind. It will most likely take the form of an open call after the delegation, sometime in May, June, or July period in 24. The call will be open to everyone and not just to the delegates. Finally, the third phase towards the end of 24 and throughout 25 will be a phase of knowledge exchange, dialogues, and showcasing opportunities, triangulating Borneo, Peninsula Malaysia, and the UK. Again, this phase will also be managed with the constraints of minimizing our footprint. The geographic scope of the program is the state of Sabah and Sarawak in Borneo, Peninsula Malaysia, especially KL, Selangor, Kelantan, Pahang, Johor, Perak, and the UK and all 4 nations. So I will now move on to the matter that brings us here today, which is the delegation opportunity. As you know, we are looking for 7 UK artists, arts organization representative, arts, tech, creative, and or producers and curators to visit Kuala Lumpur, Sabah, and Sarawak over a 10-day period in March, from the 29th of February to the 10th of March. This immersion in the Borneo context and communities will be a unique chance for the group to participate in a research trip focused on exploring and addressing climate change through art, science, and technology. We are looking for a cross-discipline, cross-skill group of individuals who have a strong interest in developing their knowledge in this area, making new connections, and have a special interest in Malaysia's cultural biodiversity and cultural diversity. We are looking for applicants who can create further legacy with the knowledge and experience gained through this research trip. The objectives of the delegation are twofold. It's about increasing knowledge, understanding, and interest of UK stakeholders about Malaysia's potential and opportunities for creative responses to climate adaptation. And it's about generating new connections and the premises for long-term collaboration pathways, such as creative works or networks or long-term partnerships over meaningful projects. The delegation will be a curated study tour to enable UK delegates to better understand Malaysia's cultural and biodiversities, communities impacted by climate change, their practice and knowledge, impact and issue, challenges, needs, and opportunities caused by climate change, and the stakeholders who work at the intersection of arts and climate in Malaysia. The delegations program will be a combination of meeting with artists, NGOs and CSOs, academics and sector experts to understand their work and challenges in 3 locations. Visits of cultural assets, biodiversity and climate change centers, 2 rural communities day visits, dialogues, brainstorming, workshop and networking event with local artists, scientists, NGOs, officials, but also some alone time for reflections. The dates are, okay, so it's going to go like this. 25 of February is the departure from the UK. On the 1st of March is the arrival in KL. The 1st to 4th of March is the program in Kuala Lumpur. 4th to 7th of March will be in Sarawak. And 7th to 10th of March will be in Sabah. And on the 10th, it's the departure to go back to return to the UK. The participants will be expected to be able to travel to Malaysia for a period of 10 days between 29 February to 10 March, and will be expected to take full part in the program. They will be expected to commit time before the project for preparation and research, including online briefing, preparation session with British Council and local stakeholders. They will have to document their experience and submit an essay or thought piece to be published on our website. And they will have to participate in the documentation, communication, wraparound activities, and evaluation of the program. So who can apply? We're looking for 7 UK artists, curators, creative producers, creative technologists who are interested in developing collaborative opportunities with talents in Malaysia, who have substantial professional experience and work at the intersection of arts and climate, who have interest to integrate study, broaden their understanding of ancestral practices in Malaysia, specifically Sabah Sarawak, who are highly creative and willing to collaborate with others, who have a strong network in the UK that can be activated to amplify the awareness and impact of the overall program's activities and objectives. The selection will be based on 4 criteria: experience. You will need to demonstrate how your experience is relevant and will contribute positively to the delegation's objectives, and that carries a 40% weightage in the decision-making. Vision and legacy. You will need to demonstrate how you will apply your learnings and experience into your current and future work practice. That's a 25% weightage. Collaboration. You need to share your experience and approach towards international collaboration. That's 25%. And equality, diversity, inclusion, or in short, EDI, you will need to demonstrate your approach towards EDI in your practice, and that weighs 10% in the decision-making. So now, finally, I want to speak to you about our positioning with this program. Human Nature will engage a cohort of diverse stakeholders who will come from different backgrounds, cultures, and who have different perspectives and viewpoints on contentious subject matters. We hope the program will be a platform for open discussions around all these topics. We support peace and prosperity by building connections, understanding and trust between people of the UK and other countries worldwide. If we connect the dots far enough back in time, everything today is a consequence of the politics of the past. And we are not discounting that. But the mission of the British Council is clear. In everything we do, the purpose is to build bridges for peace, prosperity, and the common good. Human nature was created in response to a very real and current issue, climate. And we choose to harness arts and culture and ancestral knowledge to resolve this issue. It is a discovery process. It is open-ended. Human nature is a 3-year marathon, not a sprint. Our intention is not to ask questions with preconceived answers in mind. Our only agenda is to gain insight and work together as a collective effort. What is exciting is to find answers to questions we did not ask. It's like producing a documentary. You never know what you will find. Prepare to be surprised and have your ideas contradicted. We will approach this project with sincerity and an open mind, not with preconception, as that would defeat the very purpose. It's the glass half full, half empty analogy. People see what they want to see and find what they look for. So let's look at the positive, the glass half full. And finally, on community engagement, we have commissioned Catriona Maddock of Katama, Borneo to develop a community engagement guide. We will be asking all our participants to read and adhere to this engagement guide before joining the delegation, and that we insist on. This guide will be made available to the public and will be a resource for any collaboration that involves community and that pertains to ancestral beliefs and value systems. And so I finally now want to pass the floor to Catriona, who will be expanding on the roadmap research and some of the community and the community engagement guide. So thank you very much. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Florence, and welcome everybody who's here today. So yes, my name is Catriona Maddox. I am a white British woman. I'm originally from the northeast of England, whoop, whoop, represent, but I have been based in Sarawak in East Malaysia for the last 15 years. So my background, I'll quickly just so you understand my positioning. I'm an artist, I'm a researcher, I'm a curator, and I'm also the co-founder of Kutama Borneo. So Kutama Borneo is a Sarawak, East Malaysian-based social enterprise, and we focus specifically on cultural practices and cultural knowledge of Borneo and how we can document it and highlight it and platform it through co-collaborative relationships. I'm also the co-founder and the co-curator for Borneo Bengkel, who you will be hearing from later on today in this session. And as part of my research work, I'm also part of a project called Borneo Boat Loop Revival, which last year worked with the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford University, as well as the British Museum, to look at their Borneo collections, try and correct some of the errors that had been made by former colonial officers, and try and really bring in Indigenous voices. So these artifacts that were taken from Borneo and presented in the UK have authentic voices, authentic contemporary voices, describing and exploring about the artworks and the artifacts. Okay, so that's a bit about me. As part of the British Council's Human-Nature Project, I was commissioned to do a piece of roadmap research with a British researcher, Adam Pushkin, and as part of that, I focused on the Malaysian side. So I've got over 15 years of working experience in Malaysia and a huge network, mainly within East Malaysia, but throughout the nation. So as part of our research, we surveyed 120 creative practitioners and organizations throughout Malaysia. And we found a number of trends that were going through the work. So a lot of the issues and concerns that were brought up by these creative practitioners were about issues of biodiversity, resource extraction, so whether that's deforestation, palm oil, pollution, and climate change. Another significant concern by many people was about decentralization. So trying to move away these creative hubs from the capital city into different areas of Malaysia. Much like in the UK, there's a big drive towards decentralization from London. And a lot of the creative practitioners that we were talking to and working with were very interested in developing relationships with the UK to be able to find new global audiences, to be able to explore craft and the creative economy, and to be able to platform their work within festivals and exhibitions in the UK. So after presenting all of these findings to the British Council, they then took a number of months to come together and bring up this concept and this idea of human nature. So as part of human nature, I am the consultant. I'm working towards developing a community engagement guideline, which I'll share a bit more about in a moment. I'm also helping to organise a delegate trip. So those 7 of you who are lucky enough to get a trip to Borneo, you'll be meeting me, and I will be working very closely with Borneo Bengkel and Forever Sabah to take you around and to show you some of the wonderful things of East Malaysia. So just as a kind of framing point for our international audiences, for the sake of the British attendees, we're going to talk about some terms from Malaysia, and I think it'll be helpful to frame them. So when we talk about East and West Malaysia, for those of you who are unaware, Malaysia covers 2 land masses. So that is Peninsular Malaysia, which is West Malaysia, and East Malaysia, which is the 2 states of Sarawak and Sabah on Borneo Island. Malaysia is a geographically, linguistically, culturally, and ethnically diverse nation. it's there's huge differences in the cultural experiences, the lived experiences throughout Malaysia, and I think it's worth understanding that if you're interested in coming to visit Malaysia. When we talk about Borneo, it's actually an island that is split between 4 distinct regions. So Sarawak and Sabah of East Malaysia. There is Brunei, which is a very small nation, and Kalimantan, which is part of Indonesia. So we talk about Borneo, but the trip that you'll be attending will just be in East Malaysian states of Sarawak and Sabah, alongside Kuala Lumpur. We'll also be covering indigenous populations as part of the framing for human nature. So within Malaysia, 11% of the national population is considered indigenous. But that is 50 to 60% of East Malaysian, Sarawak and Sabah states are classed as indigenous, whereas in West Malaysia, it's less than 1% of the population. And the experiences of these indigenous communities are very, very different according to East and West Malaysia, according to the land rights, the education access, and many other lived experiences of the communities. So in East Malaysia, the indigenous communities are often referred to as Orang Asal. You can also hear the term Dayak, which is an umbrella term for some of the indigenous groups here. It includes Iban, Bedayu, Orang Ulu, Dusun, Kadazan, Rungus, and Murut. So there's a huge amount of indigenous communities in Borneo, some of them living in urban areas, many of them living in rural areas, and with that facing the challenges that come with rural living and living alongside resource extraction and exploitation of materials. For the Orang Asli, they are an umbrella term for communities in West Malaysia, and like I said, they have very distinct challenges and issues from East Malaysia. Land rights and legal recognition is one of the biggest challenges that they face. Obviously, I'm sharing this with you as a white British woman, so this is something that I have had the fortune to work with a number of indigenous communities, but I'm not a representative for them. Borneo Benkel and Sonia can share a bit more about the experiences of the indigenous populations of East Malaysia after this. So as part of my role with British Council, I am developing a community engagement guidance. And the reason that we were asked to produce this for British Council was basically as a way to help guide outsiders, non-Malaysians, non-marginalised community members of how to ethically approach community members. And to frame this, I think it's really important to understand within Malaysia and specifically within indigenous communities, the idea of seeking permission, expressing gratitude, apologising for unintentional harm, and offering respect to not just humans, but to nature, the environment, to animals, and also the unseen, so the other realms, the worlds that we can't see to the human eye. It's an integral part of the indigenous worldview. And so this engagement guide is to basically assist people in how to work with communities and to understand how to collaborate. Obviously, it's written by me, who's a non-community member, so it is framed from the perspective of an outsider to outsiders. However, it is being peer reviewed by a number of communities and groups within Malaysia. And from the community guide, there'll be a series of recommendations that ensure that relationships are consensual, beneficial, and non-exploitative. So before the lucky members who come to Malaysia, you'll be able to read the community engagement guideline, and hopefully it will assist you on your time here. Okay, that one is a very quick description of quite an intense piece of work that I'm doing. If you've got any questions, at the end of this session, we've got about 25 minutes of Q&A. But for now, I am going to hand you over to 2 of our delegates. So as part of this project, British Council has engaged 2 organisations. So that is Forever Sabah and Borneo Bengkel. We're going to begin with Forever Sabah, who are a civil society entity that serves as a collaborative social movement. So I'm going to hand over to Cynthia, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Catriona. Hi, everyone. I'm Cynthia. This is very exciting. So as you can see on the map, we have a beating heart right in the middle. I'm centering Borneo as a beating heart in the middle of the universe, or rather the Earth. Sabah is the northernmost tip of the Borneo heart. By the way, this is a piece of work done by a Sabahan artist called Ilan, borrowed with permission. So Forever Sabah is about circularity, legacy, and belonging. We're small enough to pivot and large enough to show relevant scale in the region. So just for a sense of how big or small we are about the size of Scotland. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Whoever's advancing. So our vision is to transition Sabah towards what we call a diversified, equitable, circular economy. So shifting from the linear extractive patterns of the past, helping the system see itself, and transition from a hierarchical, binary construct of patronage through the threshold of complexity, where we encounter different currencies such as generosity, reciprocity, responsibility, trust. So basically a whole new universe. Next slide. So we started with the question, where will Sabah be in 50 years if we continue on our current development trajectory? And we sat in circles like this for 2 years across the sectors. We discovered 4 guiding principles forever. What recalibration is possible when the time frame is forever? Humanizing processes. What is the risk of breaking down our formats so we reveal our humanness? Facilitative leadership. What is the responsibility to lead so spaces are open, inclusive, and generative? And lastly, the indigenous imperative. What happens when we belong to place, dig in, become part of the biocultural map, part of the web of community? Next slide. Well, this is what happens. It's a little bit small, so I'm wondering if we can zoom in. So this is what we call our living ecology. It's hyperlocal, it's statewide, and it's regional. It's a movement, it's the anti-empire. It's always moving, emergent, generative, regenerative. It's across sectors, it's across species, it's across differences, it's even across realms. We have four focal areas. So if you look in the middle, beyond living landscapes and living seascapes, we have food, agriculture, fisheries, energy, infrastructure, and waste, forest, water, and soil, livelihood, tourism, and enterprise. And at the moment, we're grappling with the question of is culture and arts a 5th focal area? So just to give you a little bit of a sense, we work in palm oil, we work with elephants, we work with rice revitalization, renewable energy, apes and communities and their forest habitats, sharks and rays, sustainable livelihoods, really across the spectrum. And if you look at the green sort of cutting across the ecology there, we have community engagement as an approach across the spectrum, citizen science, legal innovation, partnerships, collaborations, and exchanges. So nothing that you see here is not intersector. Okay, you can zoom out and you'll see the 3 pillars of finance, governance, and coordination. That's how we keep the balls in the air. And then there's the DNA, which are our values and principles. I think you can zoom out. We can drop that in the chat so you can look at it in your own time. Next slide. So we're zooming through this because we don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to hand over to my colleague here, Colin. So one of the current pieces of work that we're working on is looking at how climate change is going to impact Borneo and Sabah, and really reorienting our institution towards mitigation and adaptation across our focal areas, but particularly grounded, with the communities that we work with. So over to you, Colin.
Thanks, Cynthia. So part of our work, we take the information available in the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, this last report, and downscale it for Borneo. And in today's presentation, I'm not going to go through all of our layers. I just want to give you an example of what a 3-degree warmer world would look like in Borneo. On the left-hand side, you'll see what our current humid heat or heat index layers are for Borneo. What you see is that in the lowlands, we get temperatures which are getting up to a high threat level. Under a 3-degree world, what we'll see, 3-degree warmer world, is that a lot of these areas will be getting extreme threat levels. And this has a lot of implications for communities, for our livelihoods, and many other aspects of our life. So Forever Sabah has collected a range of these threat layers, and we will be available to explain the potential impacts of climate change on Borneo to the delegates. I would now like to pass over to Sonia from Borneo Bengkel.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sonia from Borneo Bengkel. So thank you for joining us for this info session. And I'd like to say thank you as well to Forever Sabah for showing Ilan's beautiful image of Borneo at the heart of the equator against the backdrop of our vast world. For Borneo Bengkel's presentation, I invite us to zoom in further into the island of Borneo to contextualize the work we do in Borneo Bengkel. And I believe some of you have been to Borneo. So if you have, feel free to let us know in the chat. So Borneo is home to one of the oldest rainforests in the world, around 130 million years old, and one of the oldest human civilizations that was found in the Nia cave, dated to about 65,000 years old. Our people are as mega diverse as our flora and fauna. We have over 60 indigenous ethnic groups, and the people of Borneo have shared histories, cultures, and blood relations. In the 20th century, as you can see here, political boundaries as we know it today were drawn. So you can see on the right, there's a map of Borneo. And what used to be relatively fluid borders, now we have hard political borders. And Borneo Island is divided into 3 countries. So you have Sabah and Sarawak, as Catriona mentioned earlier, which belongs to the nation of Malaysia. We have Kalimantan, which is a province in Indonesia. And of course, we have the Kingdom of Brunei. So where Forever Sabah is in the northern tip towards the right, and where Catriona and I are, we are in Sarawak. So we're neighbors practically. So you can more or less triangulate where we are. So against this backdrop, Borneo Bengkel was founded in 2017 by 2 Sarawak-based creatives, Catriona Maddox from Katama, a social enterprise, and Syed Rushdie of House Kuching, which is a creative hub. And this was driven by the observation that we all live on the same island, but our artists and creative communities mainly work in silos within our own regions, despite sharing so much in common. So Borneo Bengkel came in to foster connections and collaborations between artists from different Bornean regions. By highlighting the rich creative talents of Borneans, we also sought to balance existing national narratives or biases. So in Malaysia, it's very Kuala Lumpur-centric. Indonesia, it's very Jakarta or Java-centric. And Brunei is mainly focused on the Malay Muslim majority. There are also a lot of stereotypes about Borneo. and admittedly, some of which are perpetrated by us Borneans ourselves, such as it being an island of thick, wild jungles, where the fact is actually 80% of our rainforests have been impacted by logging, and that we're a land of exotic headhunters. Whereas the fact is, headhunting has been outlawed more than 100 years ago, and many of us are as addicted to our phones as the rest of the world. So Borneo Bangkok aims to provide a platform for 21st century Borneans to tell their stories from their perspectives through their own unique takes on various creative mediums. At this point, some of you might be wondering what Bangkel in our name means. Bangkel is basically, it means workshop in the Malay language, and it reflects Borneo Bangkel's programming, which is based on knowledge exchange, mutual understanding, and a culture of collaboration. At Borneo Bangkel, we do creative residencies and festival appearances, which means we organize exhibitions, workshops, and performances. During the COVID-19 pandemic, however, we had to pivot to online programming due to travel restrictions. And so we organized various online talk sessions, as well as leveraged our social media presence to share works and research from various Bornean artists and organizations. We can move to the next slide. So here are the 5 whys that drive our work in Borneo Bangkok. And I'd like to emphasize that when we say creatives, we mean creatives of all stripes. And it means those from the visual, performing, and literary arts, craft makers, as well as researchers. So other than showcasing creative works, we also believe very much in creating and channeling economic opportunities, be it in supporting entrepreneurship, channeling grant funding, creating opportunities for paid collaborations, etc. And this is because barriers to entry into the creative industry can be high for rural or marginalized creatives or for those who don't speak much English. This is why we feel it is important for Borneo Bangkok or any other pan-Bornean platform, for that matter, to exist on an organizational level who can foster working relationships with various local and global organizations, for example, the British Council, so that opportunities can be funneled to Bornean artists who need it, regardless of national origin. So as mentioned earlier, Borneo is home to more than 60 indigenous ethnic groups. Many artists in our network produce work inspired by indigenous culture or are involved in documenting and reviving endangered customs and cultural objects. In the context of human nature, I feel it is important to note that environmental degradation also contributes to this endangerment. Widespread logging, the opening of huge plantation estates, and the creation of mega dams have caused the displacement of rural indigenous communities, as well as depleted natural resources such as rattan and Bornean ironwood that is needed to create handicrafts and other culturally significant objects. In other words, climate change and man-made environmental degradation affects everyone, and we hope that through human nature, we will be able to collectively formulate thoughtful, creative responses to climate adaptation that is reflective of the context in Borneo. For the next 2 slides, I will highlight 2 projects that we did online over the pandemic, which we feel encapsulates our work here in Borneo Bangkok. Next slide, please. So here, firstly, we have Borneo the Project, which hosted 4 sharing sessions with over 20 panelists throughout May and June 2021. The sessions showcase the work of Bornean and international creatives diving into identity, culture, and creative experimentation. And the panelists included weavers, dancers, visual artists, creative and cultural organizations, as well as writers. The project culminated with the production of a free downloadable zine compiling key quotes and themes from the sharing sessions. So on the right, you can see this beautiful zine cover with a creative illustration of Borneo that we commissioned from Sarakian artist T. Bagat. He was also one of the panelists that we engaged in the session. And if you're interested, this zine is available for download at www.borneobankel.com/ezine. So you can see the link here on the slide. Yeah. Borneo the project was supported by Malaysia's Cultural Economy Development Agency, or Cendana, the grant that they gave out in 2021. All right, next slide, please. Okay, next we have Borneo Northeast, which was a series of collaborative exchanges, conversations, and interactions between creative practitioners from Northeast England and Borneo throughout 2021. The project incorporated photography, spoken word performances, music, conversations, and a virtual exhibition. As we all know, the pandemic severely restricted opportunities for creatives to travel to various parts of the world. And Borneo Northeast aimed to make this international connection possible and equally enriching in spite of the travel restrictions. Through Northeast, we were able to create diverse, inclusive, and accessible spaces and content that reached beyond borders, cultures, languages, and perspectives. Northeast was supported by the British Council's Connections Through Culture grant. So I inserted these links here where you can actually watch the Lingua Franca spoken word performance at www.borneobankel.com/lingua-franca. And you can also explore the Sound Bank, which is an archive of sounds and music from the northeast of England and Borneo at the Borneo Bankel website/soundbank. Next slide, please. And that is all from me. Here is our email and our social media handles if you'd like to contact us and follow our work. Terima kasih and thank you for listening in. I'll pass the time now to Catriona.
Thank you very much, Sonia, for your wonderful sharing, and thank you also to Cynthia from Forever Sabah for all of your generous sharing. For the next part of the session, we have about 30 minutes left. So we're going to open up the floor to all of the participants here who would like to ask some questions. We would like to prioritize questions specifically about Borneo or issues led. If you've got any questions about the application process, do drop them in the chat and Erica will try to directly answer them, or you can email her, and I believe Erica will share her email also in the chat, and you can contact her. So yes, please take a moment if you've got any questions about the presentations by Borneo Bankel, by Forever Sabah. If you've got any questions about the community engagement guideline, any thoughts you'd like to share, you can either raise your hand or you can drop your question in the chat. So while I give everyone a moment to formulate their questions, I'm just going to pick a question that was submitted for the event registration. And this was, it's a question to British Council. What are the most important skills or background the British Council are looking for in candidates?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sonia, and thank you, Cynthia. So who are we looking for? I mean, what skills are we looking for? Well, first of all, I think it has to be somebody who has a real understanding of what impact and legacy means. But what I mean by that is also that it's someone who has a vision for the collective good rather than for his or her own practice. Because I think that a project like that demands that higher dimension of a collective good. It's not about you, it's about all of us. So to me, that is something that needs to come out strongly in the application form. I know it's difficult because it's a piece of paper and it's hard to express everything on a piece of paper with 25 questions. But if that there were a lot of questions around, what people trying to get, not shortcuts, but tips on how to apply for this. But I think really this vision of the common good is more important, is very important. The second skill I would say is someone who is very good at joining the dots between arts and climate, and someone who can think about, like I said, impact. Like if you are going to do a project, try to think about how it will benefit communities, but and try to think of a project that would be a long-term project, because there is no point in creating new work just for the sake of creating new work. That's really my position. In fact, if we are talking if we're walking the talk, producing for just producing is, I think, not the right thing to do at this stage. So have that in mind as well. Yeah, I think the third skill would be about having either a strong understanding or a strong experience, a good experience with community engagement and being able to collaborate with others. That is an important skill as well. So that means having empathy. That means being open to different point of view, and approach these differences with a positive and constructive attitude, not a critical or cynical attitude. So those are the kind of skills that we're looking for. I don't know if that's a skill, it's more like a quality, but yeah. So I hope this answers your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Florence. So I'm going to move on to ask some of the questions that have been dropped in the chat. If you'd like to actually ask your question yourself, do click the raise hand button and I will invite you to ask the question directly. The first question is I'm going to ask Francesca. And so she says, Sonia mentioned that many Borneans are online or on their phones, and there were virtual events during a pandemic. I'm wondering what the Wi-Fi reach is through Sabah and Sarawak, and how far virtual and international community connections could be sustainable and inclusive. So a nice big question that I'm going to hand over to Forever Sabah or Borneo Bengkel, if either of you would like to answer that.
Yeah, I can start first. Thank you, Francesca, for your question. So, the official statement is that in the, I think, fourth quarter of 2021, the internet penetration in populated areas in Sarawak was about 83%. There is a government aim or vision to reach 100% internet coverage in Sarawak in 2025. Sarawak is very mountainous, and there are lots of forests where you also have issues of like land rights, right? So some of those towers might sit on native land, and that might be contested by the villagers. But to answer your question on internet penetration and how the Wi-Fi reach is, it can be quite spotty. I think during the pandemic, there was an issue of there were some students in Sabah and Sarawak who actually, in the rural areas, who actually had to hike up to the mountains or go up a tree to take their exams, Yeah, so it's not, it's a lot more stable, of course, in urban areas, but in rural areas, it can be quite spotty. So that is an issue, of course, that we are also dealing with in Borneo Bengkel. As much as we would like to reach more rural artists, these infrastructural challenges that exist. So we were not able to include many rural artisans in our program, although there was some that joined in. Yeah, that would be the Sarawak perspective. And if Forever Sabah would like to add on to that.
I think for us in Sabah, it's not unsimilar. The urban centers are pretty well connected, good bandwidth. Suburban also, once you get into the rural areas, very patchy, some non-existent, particularly in the more remote forested areas where we don't even have the grid. We in Forever Sabah bring as best we can connectivity to the communities we work with across the state. Yeah, so I mean, we were doing that during the pandemic, where we were not able to meet in person, but we were finding ways in which they could be connected, even if it's, you know, patchy. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I think that's it.
I think it was one of his students who went up a tree, Colin's students.
Yeah, it was a UMS student that had to do her exams climbing up a tree.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to move on to the next question. I can't see any raised hands currently, so I'm just going to go through the list and ask the next question, which is from Navin, and he asks, what are some of the land use issues that the Indigenous community face? So again, I'm going to ask Forever Sabah. From Katama's perspective, I can add something afterwards, and Sonia, do chip in if you have anything.
This would take a long time to answer, you know, to give respect to the question. I think, as you would imagine, as our linear extractive economies bulldoze through all manner of land, we find that those with less visibility, less voice, are bulldozed along with, you know, the big drivers. There are often layered issues, you know, so as we move into ever more complex land uses, we, you know, another community will relocate from somewhere else in Sabah to a place that may be, you know, populated with its own indigenous communities, and yet these newcomers will also be indigenous somewhere. We have a situation of, for example, with smallholder palm planters whom we work with, we found that 60% of them, about 60% across Sabah, did not have land rights. They were planting oil palm, but they did not have land tenure to the places that they were planting. And about half of those that didn't have rights were planting in forest reserves. And yet, one would say, well, who was there first? They were there first before it was a forest reserve, for the most part. So I find it really hard to talk about in granularity, you know, these issues, because they are very complex, you know, across the state. But I think these are some broad, you know, this gives you a broad sense of some of the issues we grapple with.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. For myself, working with Katama in our initial 5 years, we worked very closely with rural Indigenous craft practitioners. And so I had some first-hand experience of the challenges that the community faced. I think one thing to understand, obviously, is that the most valuable land is obviously the heaviest forested primary forest land, which is often inhabited by very rural, very marginalized communities who may not have the legal capacity to be able to apply for land rights. And also, because it's such valuable land, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be fighting to retain that land or to disallow the traditional communities from having access to it. There's also an ongoing case in Sarawak about understanding while communities have their land rights of the surrounding area from the village that they live in, indigenous land practices were generally moved around various areas, and so the Iban community, and someone do correct me if I get this wrong, this land, this secondary land use is called Manoa, and that one there is no land right access to that. So it's an ongoing case to establish further land right access. It's a very complicated issue, so I'm not going to say much more for fear of saying something wrong. Sonia, do you have anything that you would like to contribute? Or Cynthia, I've seen you raise your hand, so you may be in a position to correct me.
No, I just wanted to add that even the kind of community versus conservation dynamic is very present, where we want to push for more protected areas, for example, and that impinges upon native customary rights. When I say we, it's a broad we, mostly government. We of course ask for free, prior and informed consent, etc. But that's still lacking. Things like infrastructure development, where, for example, with the Pan-Borneo Highway, we're crisscrossing Sabah, Sarawak as well, and it's cutting across rice fields, villages, really displacing thousands of people, again, without consent. So these are, I think, the kind of conflicts of conservation, development, infrastructure, modernity, more water, dams, power lines, all these things, impinge upon, I would say, native customary rights.
Thank you very much for adding that in. Sonia, have you got anything that you would like to add, or should I move on to the next question?
All good for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I have noticed we've got one hand raised in the audience. Sophie Wright, can I invite you to turn on your mic and your camera if you'd also like to, and ask your question. Thank you. If anyone is raising their hand and I'm missing it, please also do drop into the chat that you would like to ask a question, and I will invite you to come to the mic. Sophie, would you like to ask your question?
Oh, is it working now? Sorry, I'm not very good with Teams. I do apologise. I work with a lot of young people, so I was just wondering what kind of, because of the whole kind of young people kind of growing up with technology and kind of being disconnected from kind of their environment and their kind of like their connection to their kind of their communities and kind of ancestral like practices and whatnot. So I was just wondering what the kind of environment of that is like. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, Sonia, as you are the youngest presenter today, I'm going to invite you to ask that question, answer that question.
Sorry, Sophie, do you mind repeating your question? I couldn't quite catch it.
Okay, so I do apologise. I work with young people and with around their mental health, and I see a huge impact on them through technology, which is really good for communication, but it really does have detrimental kind of impact on their mental health. And kind of my question is about because of kind of technology kind of having quite a huge impact on their on them. What's the kind of environment that their connection to their kind of families and communities and being cut off from sort of like the cultural heritage. So I was just wondering what the kind of the environment of that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Right, so with technology and of course internet connection, it's always a double-edged sword. For sure, when internet comes in, you know, social media and all other things come in, and the question of distraction is always there also, and you know, external influences coming in, right? But I personally believe internet connection and access is a human right. It is a basic human right, because without that, it it will be very difficult for a lot of young people to access opportunities and services, right? Here in Malaysia, a lot of things are being increasingly digitalized and put online. So as I mentioned earlier, a student had to go, you know, literally go up a tree to take her exams because her exams were conducted online, you know. So internet connection and technology is not something we can run away from. But I think the question is, how can we get young people, including indigenous youth, to use technology and the internet in a way that is sustainable, in a way that that can help to share their stories and also further the cause of, for example, environmental conservation and cultural conservation. So a number of our artists in Borneo Bangkal's network have indeed used technology and the internet in that way, where if you go to Borneo Bangkal's social media, um, we we have shared stories from various artists from Sabah, Sarawak, Brunei, and Kalimantan to share about lost or endangered cultural customs, right? And we also shared, there's this one student from Kalimantan who did a wonderful photography essay on mining in Kalimantan. And, you know, we shared it on social media, and whether we like it or not, the world is connected through technology. So I would say yes, we do see negative effects from technology and the internet, but yeah, I think we have to work around that and also create environments and systems that are sustainable for our youths. That would be my take on it. Thank you. Yeah, Cynthia.
Hello. Hi, Sophie. Thanks for the question. My name is Fika, and I'm with Forever Sabah. Did I get it right that you were kind of alluding to an identity cultural connection through your question? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, you're muted.
Just the I was just wondering if with technology, it's sort of kind of that they're losing their connection to their sort of ancestral lands, crafts, their culture. So I was just wondering what that looks like. If that's the case, as Sonia was saying, that actually technology was enabling the young person who used technology on lost engagement around mining and yeah, sorry, I'm a rambler.
Yeah. So I think it's apt to acknowledge that there is a little bit of a disconnect, especially with urban youth, just because much of the practices are not very much central in their lives anymore because of an urban setting. But there are also, and I've noticed this, youth movements, youth initiatives to reconnect with their culture and their identity. So for example, there's an organization called Komohakan who aim to revive their mother tongue, so like some indigenous languages. In the rural areas, I would say it is a little bit more obvious that connection is more intact, just because their families still practice the culture and so do they. So I'm talking about the youth. So I think it's realistic to say that there is a bit of that chasm, if you like, but I am noticing that among the youth there is a very there's very much an obvious effort to reconnect with their roots, I would say. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Because one of the things with I find with youth engagement is trying to find where they're standing, where they feel where they are. So, and I don't want to put my own ideas on them. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Sophie. So we've got 4 raised hands and we've got about 5 questions. So I'm going to ask one question from the chat, and then Nadira, Alicia, Mayufu and Joseph, I will try to get to your raised hands as soon as possible. So from the chat, Lynn asked a question. How many different Indigenous communities responded to, how have different Indigenous communities responded to approaches by the international community, and how deep is the reach in these Indigenous communities? How can what can collaborations do to support, enhance these interactions? British Council, Forever Sabah, Borneo Benkel, is there anyone there that would like to chip in?
Yes, I can chip in right here. To the question of how Indigenous communities have reacted to the collaboration or working with international communities, I think are you asking previous work with the British Council or with other international communities or cultural engagement programs? Because I can only speak for the ones that we've engaged with. Over our under our Crafting Future program, which was over a period of 4 years, we had a project that reached out to 11 community members, and obviously their communities as well. This was a project under a different grant, but it was about craft and sustainable practices. The project was awarded to Glasgow School of Art and Borneo Lab, and they worked for over a period of 3 years with those 11 communities. And together they did a series of workshops, a series of community travels to better understand the landscape and their context. And then it also resulted into, like I said, there was a collaboration over design innovation workshops and knowledge exchanges. And in the end, there was an amazing exhibition called Serumpun, which took place at the Borneo Museum of Cultures. And we've just received yesterday their book, which the book is called Serumpun, and it documents that journey, that collaboration over 3 years with 11 communities. And it also documents the context that they are in and the challenges with regards to, sustainability of their environment, access to raw materials, and how that is going to have an impact on their cultural practices. So we've had long-term relationships But you also have to understand that we have capacity constraints. We cannot be the question to the depth and the length, I think is very important, because we are only 3 in the team, and our projects, this is why we work through others as well. People like Forever Sabah, Borneo Bangkok, because us alone, we don't have the capacity to work directly with the communities. So this is why we deliver the projects through people who have that capacity and access, which we don't have. But yeah, we can share more about this particular project that we did over the last 3 years. I can share the book with whoever wants to get a copy, because I think there is a lot of interesting knowledge about the project and the practices. But I would pass now to Forever Sabah and to Borneo Bangkok to also add their experience to answer this question.
I'm just quickly going to do a time check and say we've got about 10 minutes left of the Q&A session. So if we can move through questions as quickly and respectfully as possibly.
Okay. Well, then I guess we can move on to another question then.
Okay. So British Council will take time to answer your questions via email. You can also reach out to both Borneo Bangkok, Katama and Forever Sabah if you've got a burning question that isn't answered today through social media. I believe Erica has shared everyone's contact details, so we will do our best to answer your questions, if not today, in the future. So next I'm going to invite Nadira, who's got her hand raised, to ask her question.
Hi everyone, thanks Kat. So this question might be more for Florence. So I understand that this program wants to foster partnerships between UK and Malaysian artists. I have a project which I've mentioned that I've been developing with indigenous rural communities in Sabah for a while now. So I'm it's about to rain here. Yeah. Anyways, I'm interested in this program, but at the same time, I'm also trying to manage my expectations of what am I supposed to, how do I speak to the UK artists I want to collaborate with, in the sense that, like, does the output or the deliverables, do they need to have a UK angle, and do we have to think also further down the line of being able to exhibit these works there?
So thank you. Are you done, Nadira? Yeah, I can answer now.
I hope I was clear. Like I had.
No, you are.
Sorry.
I can. The climate is hearing us and is responding to us. That's what's happening. Yeah, thanks for your question. So what we're looking for is not necessarily a focus on the UK. What we're looking for is the collaboration process. It's the fact that the work is done together. If the focus of the work has to be in Malaysia, that's fine. Because what we want to see is the collaboration process, not I mean, not to say that we don't want to see the end product. Of course we do. Of course it's very super important, of course. But what I'm trying to say here is that for us, when we put people together, it's not about that there is a 50% content on Malaysia and the UK. No, it's not. That's not like that. If the story is about Malaysia, but it's done together with a UK collaborator who can also bring in his either, you know, whatever it is, whether it's in terms of perspective, artistic vision, skill set, philosophical point of view, all this is, that's what matters. And I think there was a second part to your question. Was there?
Exhibitions and the like. Would
Right.
we need to exhibit there? Or would there be support for us to exhibit these works in the UK?
Okay, with regards to exhibition and showcasing, like I mentioned earlier, that will take place in the last part of the program. But I also want everybody to have in mind that as we're doing something on climate, we need to be mindful of creating more carbon footprint. So this is also part of the reason why we have put technology, creative tech in the cohort, because if through this project we can also develop ideas about sharing the work that we're doing without having to travel, that would be great. So when you think about your projects, think about ways that it can be shared with a wider audience, but without creating so much footprint. And on that note, I would like to say that it's ironic that we're talking about climate and we're proposing a delegation that involves 7 people flying. Yeah, we're very aware of this. However, I think we need to look at this with the 3-year and potentially even more than 3 years, because just so you know, we're also going to try to raise funds externally to amplify this project, because we feel it's so important that if we can get additional funding from external parties, we would be able to amplify the number of projects and potentially, make sure that there is a continuity over the 3 years. The more time we have to work on a topic like this, the better. We shouldn't just do a quick one. We should, it will take time. We need that time to make a coherent and impactful project overall. So the delegation is just the start. And what I wanted to say about this is the fact that for such an immersion, it's already so short. It's just 7 days. There is no way that anyone who comes here is going to fully understand the context. We are only able to give a bit of understanding. But it has to be done with the body experience, because you need to come here. You need to, how do we do a cultural immersion without being on the ground, meeting the people, talking to the people, listening to the sounds, smelling the smells? It has to be done in person. However, the rest of the projects, we're really looking at how we can do things without having to include travel in it. So that was a bit of an explanation on the side to explain. I know that there is a contradiction with the delegation traveling, so I just wanted to explain that as well. The other thing I wanted to say before, I'm sorry for all the questions, but I just want to add one more important information. There will be a source of funding and continuation of our projects under Human-Nature Programme. However, we also are going to launch very shortly, actually on the 31st of January, another huge call. It's a global call under International Collaboration Grant Programme. The value of the call will be between £25,000 and £75,000. So you can also look at that to think of a collaborative project that we could bring under human nature. Also, we have another program called Connection Through Cultures, which Sonia mentioned earlier, where where Borneo Benkel had done some grants with us before. We've just selected 9 projects. 7 of the projects are going to be in relation to climate change. So we will also do another round of CTC, or Connection to Culture, this year again. So again, there will be additional sources of funding for other projects. So please do get in touch with us, follow us, so that you are aware of all these opportunities. So that's it for me. you can go on to the next question. Have I responded to you, Nadira? Is that okay?
Yes, great, thank you.
Super, thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one question from the chat and then hopefully get through everyone's raised hand. So Dr. Anne, you asked a number of questions. I'm going to highlight this first question. How were the two organisations, Forever Sabah and Borneo Bengkel, chosen to work with the British Council in this project? And what are their expectations from this 3-year project? So Borneo Bengkel, Forever Sabah, if you'd like to share about how you got this position and what you hope to get from it, or what you expect from it.
Can I answer the part about how they were chosen? Because that's under our umbrella. So just to answer this part, Anne, and thank you for your questions. At the British Council, we follow a very, very rigorous procurement process. Every call that we do is published on our website and also on social media. Anyone who follows us will know all these calls. In fact, you can. They're still on our website at the moment as closed opportunities, but we have done an open call for this partnership, this delegation partnership, asking people to respond to us. And there was obviously a selection process that was taken over all the different applications. And what else can I add here? Yeah, so basically we have a very open process, and it's a transparent process of asking for proposals and going through our selection process, which is very, very strict. So I think that's how I can answer for this question. I'll pass it on to maybe Cynthia to answer the rest. Thanks.
I think for us, what we'd like to get out of this in the time is, one, to answer the question: would we center culture and arts as part of the shift from the linear extractive economy to the diversified, equitable, circular economy? And secondly, one thing that's been very much center on our table is coloniality, because everything that we're finding in our work across the focal areas and across the sectors surfaces the issue of coloniality within our laws, our education system, our land system, the colonized psyche. We colonize ourselves. So we've been deep in this conversation. We look for folks that we can talk about this with. We look for folks who are interested in creating a little space for us to breathe, to soften into the hard conversation of what would it be like to talk about trauma, repair, regeneration, again, across, what about across life and livelihoods, and a more sane, a more equitable circular economy.
Yeah, from my side, I think from Borneo Bengkel's side, we are excited to co-develop a holistic program formulating creative responses to climate adaptation, and we definitely look forward to working together, the UK delegates. I think I represent Borneo Bengkel when we also say we're excited to work alongside Forever Sabah. It will be our first time actively working with an environmentally focused organization, and I like to imagine us as sort of like yin and yang, like balancing each other out and blending culture, arts, and environment. So that would be my personal expectation, and I think I echo the rest of the team as well when I say this. Thank you.
Okay, so we are officially out of time, so I'm going to invite Joseph, because he so patiently had his hand raised, as the last question. Anyone else? We have recorded your questions and we will do our best to answer them after today's session. So can I invite Joseph to ask your question, please? Joseph Barnes Phillips, are you there? Have you got a question that you would like to ask?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, Joseph. Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, sorry. I'm busy in Southeast London, so you're hearing lots of the street sounds, so apologies. My question was around what have been the challenges between race and ethnicity due to Malaysia's biodiversity? And has there been any success stories in the intersectionality of subcultures?
I will try to answer that question. Thank you, Joseph, for that. Malaysia, so interestingly, even British colonial, I have to preface with this, even British colonial rule in Malaysia is not the same throughout, or was not the same throughout. In Peninsular Malaysia, they were ruled by the British government. In Sabah, I believe it's the North Borneo Company. So it's a private company that ruled Sabah. Correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong. Whereas for Sarawak, we were actually ruled by a family, the Brooke family from the UK. Right. So all of this created different dynamics. I would say that with the British government, they had this divide and conquer policy where they actually segregated different races into different locales. All right. So, for example, the Malays were put in the villages, the Indians in the plantation estates, and the Chinese in the urban areas. So with this segregation, it became difficult for the communities in Peninsular Malaysia to unite against British colonial rule. In Sarawak, it was, I don't know if I should use the word, a bit more inclusive, or the Brooke family had they were a bit more friendly towards the indigenous population. So there's a strange romanticism around the Brooke family, but also, of course, there are some, if we were to pull out some critiques, they're definitely there. But I would say that overall, this has left a lasting impression, this segregation of races, right? Because what was common among all of it is that you have these ethnicities divided into different ethnic names. And for example, what is classified as Malay in Malaysia is actually different as to what was classified as Malay in Indonesia and in Philippines. So you have all this mix, right? And it's created a complex issue of identity politics and all of that, which we are currently navigating. I would say if in terms of success stories, I'm not sure exactly what is defined as success here, but I would say that definitely there is a rise, a revival, especially among indigenous groups across Malaysia in the past, let's say 10 years or so, to reconnect back with their roots and to really, ask for more representation, and also within the internet, the online social media space as well. And this is what we're doing under Borneo Bangkal, is to facilitate those voices and those revivals. So that would be my take from it. Maybe Forever Sabah would like to come in. Thank you.
We've been debating here how to answer, but we feel like we won't be doing justice to the question because it's so deeply complex. I'm not sure if we got your question correctly. There was a lot of street sound, but we are certainly grappling with, is diversity and biodiversity, i.e. in the land and the waters, is that accompanying us into the explorations, the discoveries, the rediscoveries, the rememberings that we need to, move into. I think that's your question, or maybe I'm complicating it. But I think, it's just too short a time to really do justice to such a complex question.
This is why we need to have this program, so that we can really take the time to unpick all these really important and interesting topics, no matter how controversial they can be. Catriona, I think that we are over by 9 minutes, right?
Yes, we are. I think it's time to wrap up and to say thank you very much to everyone for their generous questions. British Council are going to give a quick summary. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you Borneo Benkel and Forever Sabah for your generous sharing, and thank you for being part of it. Thank you British Council. Handing it over.
Thank you, Catriona. So yes, we've come to the end of our session today. To wrap up the session, I would like to thank my colleagues Florence and Khadija for their hard work on the session, especially today's presenting partners, Katama Borneo, Forever Sabah, and Borneo Benkel, for your time and generosity in sharing with us. I hope you've all gained some insights into the Human-Nature Programme that would spur you to apply for the delegation opportunity, which will be closing this Sunday at UK time 11:59 p.m. and results will be announced by end of the month. Lastly, we would like to encourage you to follow the progress of this program via our social channels, and do get in touch with us via our emails that we have popped on the chat if you'd like to further discuss opportunities and collaborations. Not quite a summary because we're running out of time, but with that, take care, and we really hope to receive your applications and email inquiries to continue this conversation. So see you very soon, and have a good evening or good day wherever you are. Thank you.